Good morning. Happy commencement. My name is Liz Forster, and happy graduation. First, I would like to thank my peers, the senior class committee, Dean Edmonds, and President Tiefenthaler for nominating me to introduce today's commencement speaker. I'd also like to congratulate my friends and peers for graduating today. It's been a wonderful roller coaster of 4 years with all of you. With that, it is my honor to introduce today's commencement speaker, Hampton Sides. For the past 3 years, Hampton has been the inaugural journalist in the new Journalist in Residence program. During his time, he has invited exceptional journalists like Mark Bryant, John Krakauer, Helen Thorpe, Mike Paternity, and Peter Breslow, among others, to teach journalism classes and give all-college lectures. In addition to his role as journalist in residence at Colorado College, Hampton is best known for his historical nonfiction, including best-selling histories, Ghost Soldiers, Blood and Thunder, and most recently, In the Kingdom of Ice. He has also worked as editor-at-large for Outside Magazine and is a frequent contributor to National Geographic, among other magazines. His captivating feature writings have earned him 2 nominations for National Magazine Awards. I first met Hampton during an interview my sophomore year for a story that I wrote as a catalyst writer about the Journalist in Residence program. Honestly, I thought the interview was a disaster because I was a young journalist and I was so distracted by his extensive curriculum vitae. At the end of the interview, Hampton so graciously said how much he enjoyed my questions and spending time with me. I gushed at the compliment and rode the high of the ego boost for quite some time. Little did I know at that time that those credentials would pale in comparison to the relationship we would build a year and a half later. During Block 5 of this year, I took Hampton's class, Narrative Nonfiction, which he co-taught with Mike Paternity. On top of the usual readings and daily writing exercises, each person in the class was to write a long-form story of their choice. As someone who usually is bursting with story ideas, I stumbled around campus in Colorado Springs trying to find something compelling to me. I was blank, for some reason paralyzed within a world of immense journalistic opportunity. With Hampton's careful eye, though, he pitched a story idea from one of my daily writing assignments, of all places. Soon I was on a journey to piece together the death of an up-and-coming young kayaker in 2011. Through the interviews with other world kayakers, friends, and family and personal research, I had to capture this boy's essence and try to articulate the delicate balance so many of us seek between risk and reward. Hampton advised me every step of the interview and writing process, whether instilling in me the confidence to ask uncomfortable yet essential questions during interview, or reviewing 3,000-word transcripts. Hampton went to every length to help me produce one of the proudest works in my journalism career. Such devotion to mentorship is something a curriculum vitae can never convey. Throughout this semester, as I have tried to navigate the journalism world as a professional, I have wondered if the grueling hours, low pay scale, and cutthroat environment of journalism are even worth pursuing. I could have job security and a direct impact if I used my environmental policy degree in environmental consulting or public relations. This pursuit of mine sometimes seems frivolous, as many of us are. But then I look at Hampton and I'm reminded that the choice that I make transcends a salary and comfort. Hampton shows me that the critical eye unique to journalists serves each and every one of us and cannot be wasted. It's something that I cannot waste. Without further ado, Hampton Sides.
Thank you very much, Liz. That is so nice. What a rare treat it is to be introduced by your own student. And I want to thank the meteorology department of Colorado College for ordering up this beautiful day. I want to thank Jill for her steadfast leadership and her support of the Journalist in Residence program, which I've had the honor and the privilege to lead these past 3 years. So I also want to congratulate the parents. This time last year, I was sitting where you are to celebrate the graduation of my son, McCall. I'm sitting with my wife, and it is a major accomplishment, and your bank account is going to breathe a sigh of relief now. But mainly, I want to congratulate and warmly welcome the class of 2017. It is a huge joy and an honor to be here to wish you on your life's adventures. I've taught some of you. I've read your stuff in the college publications. I've rooted for you on the soccer fields. I've even tried my hand and tested my hand-eye coordination skills with some of you, including Liz, in the exacting sport of beer pong. Perhaps the national sport of Colorado College. And I've so thoroughly enjoyed teaching at this amazing college, this unique college that has really mastered, perfected the art, the almost forgotten art of doing one thing at a time. So I don't know about you, but I am a big fan of the sayings of Yogi Berra, the late great catcher for the New York Yankees, who later became a manager and a coach. For those of you among the students who don't know who he was, just briefly, he was famous, Yogi Berra, for uttering these pithy, off-the-cuff malapropisms, little witticisms that were seemingly contradictory, but also somehow wise. His sayings, which were known as yogi-isms, made no sense, and yet they made perfect sense. One of his famous sayings was, "The future ain't what it used to be." Or, "When you come to the fork in the road, take it." Or, "It's deja vu all over again." Or, "No one goes there anymore. It's too crowded." One sports writer has defined a yogiism as distilled bits of wisdom which, like good country songs, get to the truth in a hurry. A few others, just because it's fun, he said, "Half the lies that they've told about me aren't true. Never, ever answer an anonymous letter." This is one of my favorites. "Always go to other people's funerals. Otherwise, they won't come to yours." And this one, which perhaps carries a special resonance in our current world and the current state of things in Washington, he said, "Even Napoleon had his Watergate." I'm going to try really hard to avoid the subject of politics today, but with all that's been happening in the news, it's kind of hard to avoid it altogether. No doubt, like many of you, I've become riveted to the news this past few months, especially the past few weeks. Alternately fascinated and horrified, sometimes repulsed, sometimes entertained. In the end, I guess I have to admit that I've become addicted to the news. I need my daily fix. I need my hourly dose, my half-hourly hit. This maddening dependency on the news has affected my sleep, my disposition, my ability to focus, and probably my sanity. Well, it turns out that neuroscientists have recently identified a new hormone that is produced by the brain, a substance like dopamine or serotonin, with its own networks of receptors. A hormone that, when it surges within us, leads directly to these symptoms of manic restlessness. And it is apparently reactivated each time we turn on the news or consult our iPhones. The researchers have just given this new substance an official scientific name. It's called Trumpamine. Today, I want to talk about something that, while it's perhaps related to Trumpamine, is a little bigger and a little more serious and a little more urgent. something that as a journalist and as a historian is of enormous concern to me, and something that should be of enormous concern to all of us who care about the health of our democracy and the prospect for civility in our public life. What I want to talk about today is the truth. It's been said that we live in an age of truth decay, that we inhabit a post-factual world, a world of fake news and alternative facts, a world in which every story is tainted, the product of leaks and hacks, black ops and active measures, propaganda and disinformation spread by trolls, replicated by bots, amplified in echo chambers deep in the dungeons of the web. The noun truth, it seems, has morphed into something far squishier, what Stephen Colbert used to call truthiness. We see that serious journalism has been all but replaced by the infoscape, the blogosphere, the social network, the Twitterverse. Stories have become merely content. News organizations have become merely platforms. The long narrative has been pecked to death by tiny news feeds that crawl across the bottom of the screen. We see that the democratization of information, combined with the shrinking of our attention spans and our fast twitching fingers, has led to a Tower of Babel that threatens to make all of us not only unintelligible to each other, but also sometimes insufferable. Last year, the Oxford English Dictionary proclaimed post-truth to be the word of the year for 2016. Post-truth, adjective, relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Some have said that not only is truth under siege, but also the standards by which we determine it. It's the problem at the root of our crises in journalism and in politics, but it also speaks to something deeper, something perhaps existential. Ultimately, it works its way down to the level of epistemology. What do we know? How do we know what we know? Who did the fact-checking? How does your truth compete with my truth, and how does it make me feel? Someone who's written brilliantly and thought deeply about this subject is University of Connecticut philosopher and author Michael P. Lynch, who is the author of the book, The Internet of Us. Lynch writes, without a common background of standards against which we measure what counts as reliable information or a reliable method of inquiry and what doesn't, we won't be able to agree on the facts, let alone on values. Indeed, this is precisely the situation we seem to be headed toward in the United States. This syndrome was acutely on display in the recent election, but it's a phenomenon that took years and even decades to come about. The real problem, I think, is not that there's no such thing as truth anymore, but rather that there are multiplicities of truth, multiplexes of reality. We are drowned in so much information, swamped by such oceans of data that we can't process it all. The idea of shared facts, facts that we can all pretty much agree on and trust, seems to have gone the way of the great CBS anchorman, Walter Cronkite, who used to sign off every night with the famous tagline, and that's the way it is. Who could get away with that today? Today, there is no it, and there is no is. Instead, the world has become minutely fractured. There are CNN facts and Fox facts, blue facts and red facts, Huffington facts and Breitbart facts, climate change believer facts and climate change denier facts. We select the wavelength of truth that suits us, and we park our sensibilities there, marinating our minds in sauces that we think we already like. We create bubbles of information, silos of opinion, and we tune out all that is extraneous or disagreeable. And increasingly, it seems that we simply can get away with denying facts that are inconvenient to our chosen world. We just blot them out as though they never happened, as though they don't exist. The other problem that's led to this phenomenon of truth decay, of course, is the incredible speed and ease with which information travels today. Never in the history of the world has so much knowledge been so instantaneously available at our fingertips and for free. Yet, ironically, never before have we been so disdainful of facts. Because they are so easy to come by, they are no longer precious. What we need, why do we need to be smart when we have smartphones? Why do we need to know when we can Google know? But if information travels fast and furious, so of course does misinformation. Errors and innuendos, hoaxes and wholesale fictions. Winston Churchill said that a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. Today, a lie circumnavigates the globe before we can even locate our pants. We've seen the rise of fake news, not only false stories, but whole websites that are dedicated expressly designed to spread those lies. The massive chemical disaster that ISIS recently orchestrated in St. Mary Parish, Louisiana, didn't happen. Remember that horrible terrorist attack recently in Sweden? Remember that horrible massacre in Bowling Green? The real problem with this sort of story is not the falsehood itself, but the subtle ways in which it begins to erode the foundations of truth itself, according to the authors of a recent Rand Corporation study on truth decay. The real goal of fake news is, quote, not to make people believe the lie, it is to make them doubt all news. The chess genius Garry Kasparov said it even better. He said, the point of modern propaganda isn't only to misinform or push an agenda. It is to exhaust your critical thinking. It is to annihilate truth. Some writers have begun to postulate that the constant and compulsive use of the internet and its related devices has changed the way we think, altered our processes of cognition, possibly even changed the way the very wiring in our brains fire. While that may be far-fetched, I think it's safe to say that it has caused many of us to be more distracted, more disjointed, and more restless in our hot pursuit of information. We go faster and farther, but we don't necessarily go deeper. We know more, but we don't understand. Nicholas Carr, in his acclaimed book about this phenomenon, The Shallows, warns that our over-reliance on the internet has caused us, in effect, to outsource human intelligence and outsource it to distant machines and algorithms. We've become more facile at gathering facts while seldom grasping the deeper meanings of very complicated and complex ideas. Carr, who like most of us uses the internet like 100 times a day, confesses that he thinks that it is, quote, chipping away at my capacity for concentration and contemplation. My mind now expects to take in information the way the net distributes it, in a swiftly moving stream of particles. Once I was a scuba diver in the sea of words. Now I zip along the surface like a guy on a jet ski. In The Shallows, Carr talks about a kind of observational experiment that the great author Nathaniel Hawthorne undertook one morning in Concord, Massachusetts in the summer of 1844. He went out to a place called Sleepy Hollow, not far from his house. He sat down in the grass, and then he took copious notes on everything he saw and heard and felt and smelled around him. In a sense, Hawthorne was being a kind of investigative journalist of the pastoral, documenting every twisting leaf, every squirrel and bird, the call of farmers working in the distant fields, the ebb and flow of all the quiet stirrings. He was conducting a romantic and mildly radical experiment. Mind you, this was well before his colleague, Henry David Thoreau, wrote Walden Pond. In that rustic clearing at Sleepy Hollow, Hawthorne fell into a kind of rapturous reverie, a spell. But then, all at once, he was startled by the shrill sound of something so completely at odds with the world he was describing, a newly invented machine invading the garden. It was a train, chuffing through the countryside, a technology so completely disruptive that it changed everything. Hawthorne writes, "But hark, there is the whistle of the locomotive, the long shriek, harsh above all other harshness. For the space of a mile cannot mollify it into harmony. It tells a story of busy men, citizens from the hot street, who have come to spend a day in a country village, men of business, in short, of all unquietness, and no wonder that it gives such a startling shriek, since it brings the noisy world into the midst of our slumberous peace." Carr believes that the internet is akin to that locomotive, that machine in the garden. It is an invention that we must be grateful for. There is nothing like it in the history of the planet, bringing the entire world, or at least a digital approximation of it, right into our lives. But it is a gift that we should be extremely wary of. This loud, brash interloper that, if we're not careful, can drag all of us out of our sleepy hollows forever, whether we like it or not. So, are we really living in a post-truth society? Are we really living in a world of alternative facts? Are all the clocks striking 13? Is Trumpamine really coursing through our veins? Is this the world today? And if it is the world of today, how do we navigate it? What do we do with it? And what advice do I have for you who are about to embark upon it? My first piece of advice is please, 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 do not give up on the truth. It may be taking a beating right now, but it is still alive and well, and it will never go out of style. Truth may not be a thing that we can always absolutely, objectively prove, but it is a thing we can aspire to, a thing that we must aspire to. In our journalism, in our government, in our courts, in our businesses, in our personal lives, and in our very souls. I've built my life and my livelihood on chasing the truth and trying to get the facts right. I haven't always succeeded. Sometimes I've failed completely, but I've always found it a noble and eminently worthy cause. Second thing I would say is trust your instincts to get at the truth. That's what the critical thinking that comes with a liberal arts education is all about. You've spent the last 4 years honing your skills of judgment and discernment, learning to weigh the evidence and question everything. You've spent the last 4 years assessing and observing and listening with an open but also skeptical mind, developing, as Wordsworth once put it, a heart that watches and receives. Those critical skills may not seem directly marketable to you right now, but you will find that they put you in very good stead and put you on very solid ground as you go through life. And they are skills that have never been more important to our society. Another thing I would say is nil desperandum. Do not despair. This trend of truth decay, I firmly believe, is in many ways a temporary phase. It is a tear in our social fabric caused by the many far-ranging dislocations that are brought on in turn by the bewildering advent of worldwide electronic interconnectivity and the cacophony of all our little devices. From the standpoint of human evolution, this is all still so new to us, and we're just beginning to figure it out. We're like infants playing with strange new toys. Some of these toys are extremely cool, of course, and helpful. Some of them are often simultaneously very dangerous, rather like the poisonous berries that our hunter-gatherer ancestors learned not to eat a long time ago. Some of our inventions in the guise of easy, fast communication are actually retarding our ability to say anything eloquent or meaningful. They are distorting our sense of reality and creating a toxic environment for us all. But I believe that we will find a way to ameliorate the most harmful effects of our new devices and technologies. As a journalist, I'm a zealot for the First Amendment. And so I'm not talking about censorship here, but on the other hand, I would be all for a constitutional amendment preventing any sitting U.S. president from having a Twitter account. It's an absurd and I think deeply dangerous idea to think that matters of statecraft can be conducted in 140 characters. And another thing, while we're on the subject of those toys, whatever you do, wherever you go, I want to encourage you to seek out an authentic experience. There's far too much secondary living, virtual living, simulated living going on these days. As we've been discussing, too often life comes to us mediated through earbuds and screens and viewfinders. Now, I don't mean to sound like a Luddite. This is not remotely my point. You're coming of age in a fascinating and truly revolutionary era of technological innovation that has nearly limitless possibilities. There's no retreating from the digital age. But don't let the gadgets distract you from the true pulse of life. My advice to you is whatever you do, wherever you go, seek out something gritty and challenging and real. Experience real love and real pain in real places with real people, face to face, heart to heart. Your life will be happier and richer in direct proportion to its authenticity. And so, every now and then, with some regularity, unplug. You've heard it 1,000 times, but it's true. Whether it's 1 hour a day, or 1 day a week, or 1 week a year, I believe that the best way to prevent truth decay is to seek truth outside of our echo chambers of instantaneous communication. Tune out, shut up, sign off, power down. Or better yet, escape to the mountains. Get yourself on a trout stream. Be a ski bum for a while. Go off grid. Find your church. Quit your machines and return to the garden. Living at the edge of these mountains here at a school that seems to take every possible advantage of the great landscapes of the West, this is something most of you already know deep in your bones, that the nature of truth can often best be found in the truth of nature. For wilderness doesn't lie, and it has much to teach. To me, it's a source of great comfort to be swallowed up in places that remind us that we, Homo not so sapiens, and all of our inventions are mere spore specks in the record of time. It's one of life's great paradoxes. Nothing makes us feel grander than to feel small. And nothing makes us wiser than to know that we know nothing at all. This, I think, is what Wordsworth was referring to in his great poem, The Tables Turned, when he said, "Sweet is the lore which nature brings. Our meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous forms of things. We murder to dissect. Enough of science and of art. Close up those barren leaves. Come forth and bring with you a heart that watches and receives." To the class of 2017, be well and stay true. I wish you happiness and fulfillment on your life's journey, wherever it may lead. I hope you will enjoy every twist and every turn. But just remember, when you come to the fork in the road, take it. Thank you.